How to mix music. 7 essential tips. Let's imagine you have an instrument, and you want to mix it. What would that look like? How would you do it? Where would you start? In the following steps, I'll give you an example of what a mixing chain could look like. The reason I say could is because there's no single recipe or one-size-fits-all method when it comes to mixing. There are only steps that are often used, but these are very much dependent on the individual piece of audio material in question, whether that's mixing vocals, mixing drums, mixing guitars, or anything else. But nonetheless, here's 7 of the most used steps that you can use to start mixing, plus some great free music production plugin options. 1. Corrective EQ. As you may have already guessed, one of the first most common steps when it comes to mixing is all to do with EQ. What's special about this step is that we focus only on using the EQ to reduce frequencies, rather than boosting anything, which will come later. You could say then that the overall aim of this step is to remove all unnecessary frequencies we don't need. Important to remember, think of the context your sound will play in. Never EQ it in solo mode. Even if your audio sounds really weird while playing solo, it might still sound good in context, and that's what's most important. Does your sound really need the low-end frequencies, or is there already a bass playing? Think like this the whole time. And don't cut off too much, as this will just sound unnatural in context. 2. Compression. Compression is one of the most hated topics amongst music producers and DJs because many producers don't know its purpose or simply use it every time they mix. But is that needed? No. Compression reduces the dynamic range of a signal. What does this mean? For example, let's talk about mixing guitar audio. Imagine you record a friend with a guitar. He is fingerpicking a self-made song. While recording, he hits the strings of the guitar with different velocities, and this results in a recording with parts which are loud and others quieter. That is what dynamic range describes, the difference between the quietest and loudest parts of a sound/recording. So, recordings with higher dynamic ranges will need some compression in order to make the recording smoother. The settings in the compressor will highly depend on your audio material, so make sure you know what the knobs do before you use them. 3. Additive EQ. In Step 2, Additive EQing, we focus on only adding missing frequencies. But which frequencies are missing? Well, that's up to you. Just rely on your own ears, your own musical taste, and what sounds natural to you. Professionals mixing engineers often give a boost of around 3 kHz, because that's the area our ears are the most sensitive to. Adding a boost around 300 to 500 Hz can add warmth to your sound if that's what you desire. Another way is to add a boost above 7 kHz to add some air. Trial and test all of these approaches, but decide every time if it's really making your sound recording sound better in context. 4. Saturation. This step is optional. Not every sound will need saturation. And in fact, on some sounds, this may sound awful. Why? Because saturation will add frequencies you may have already added. But some producers swear that it could color a track in a pleasant way, so my tip is trial and error. You will notice if saturation sounds good on your audio material or not. But don't overdo it. This can completely mess up the sound if you do it wrong. 5. Stereo image. You may have heard that it is important to set the sound's position in the stereo image, and that is right. By separating them from each other, you give them more space to breathe and a better stereo image to your listener, making it easier for him or her to localize single sounds in your track. You can do that by either panning your audio to left or right, or by placing them mono or more stereo. 6. Reverb and delay. Reverb and delay are creative effects. They aren't needed every time, especially the delay. Be careful with it. Used too often, the delay could overlay with other delays and this will sound sludgy. Same goes with reverb. Used too strong or with an oversized decay, it will make your song muddy. Because of this, mainly use your reverb for giving your track slash and the single sounds in it a feeling of room, so it doesn't sound dry. Our ears are used to hearing everything in a room context. Therefore, reverb can sound amazingly good if it's used right. A big advantage is to use one or more reverb send buses in your project, for example, one with a bigger and one with a smaller reverb. And if you don't know what a send bus is, find out here. 7. Volume. Finally, Recheck the volume of your sound. You may notice that it is much louder now, with all the effects on it, than it was when it was dry. So make sure you check if the volume is okay in context or if it's too loud.